In Valdaria, every alpha knew the law. An alpha who ruled for 25 years without a male heir would be stripped of his throne, and the title would pass to the next in line. For 24 years, Alpha Luis had tried relentlessly to father a son. He had chosen mates, concubines, even performed every ritual known to the pack, yet the moon goddess gave him only daughters. Now, with just 1 year left before his reign would be taken from him, desperation began to rule his heart more than reason. Ignoring the whispers of the court and the disapproval of his queens, he turned his eyes to a simple maid, hoping that through her, fate might finally grant him the male pup he so desperately longed for. Chapter 1. The storm began the same hour the cry of a newborn echoed through the old stone walls of Valdaria's palace. The air was thick, heavy with blood, with secrets, and with the iron scent of fear. Outside, lightning tore across the sky like claws. Wolves howled from the forest below, their cries echoing through the valley. The blood moon rose that night, large, red, and unforgiving. It was said among the wolves of Valdaria that when the moon bled, a curse was born with it. Inside a dimly lit chamber, a young maid lay drenched in sweat, her breath short and trembling. Angela. Her hair clung to her damp face as she clutched the bed sheets, her teeth digging into her lip to silence another scream. The old midwife beside her barked orders, her voice sharp as the rain slamming the windows. "Push, girl. The child's halfway, push before the moon wanes." Angela cried out, her voice cracking, echoing off the cold walls. The scent of pain and blood filled the room. Moments later, a cry, soft, fragile, beautiful, pierced the night. The midwife froze. Her wrinkled hands trembled as she lifted the pup into the firelight. The blood moon's reflection shimmered faintly on the child's skin. "She's," the midwife whispered, eyes wide. "A girl." Angela collapsed back, exhausted, her arms reaching out weakly. "She's healthy?" she asked, tears streaming down her face. "Please, let me see her." Before the woman could answer, the door creaked open. The Alpha of Valdaria entered, his presence like a cold wind. He wore no crown tonight, just a dark cloak soaked from the rain. His amber eyes glowed faintly, the mark of his wolf. The midwife immediately lowered her head. "My lord." He didn't reply. His gaze swept to the child in her hands. A pause. Then his jaw tightened. "It's a girl." The midwife hesitated. "Yes, your majesty. But strong. She carries your blood." Angela, still trembling, looked up at him, her lips parting. "Please, my lord, she's your child." Silence. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried the kind of power that silences even thunder. He stepped closer, the shadows bending with his movement. For a long moment, he stared at the pup, tiny, fragile, wrapped in a torn sheet. Then he turned to the midwife. "No one must know," he said quietly. "No one." Angela's heart dropped. "What?" He looked at her then, eyes burning with something between anger and despair. "The prophecy," he muttered. "It said a son will rise under the blood moon to lead Valdaria's wolves into a new age. If word spreads that you bore me a girl, not a boy," he trailed off, his jaw clenched. "They'll call me cursed. They'll call me a fraud and rip me of post." Angela shook her head, tears spilling. "But she's still your blood. Please, she's innocent." The Alpha turned, his tone colder now. "From this night on, she's no longer a girl. She's my heir. Alpha heir of Valdaria." The room went still. Even the rain seemed to pause. The midwife looked between them, horrified. "My lord, the council." "You'll keep your tongue," the Alpha snapped. "You'll be paid handsomely and silenced permanently if needed." Angela's breath hitched. "No, please, don't hurt her." He looked at her, eyes softening for just a moment. "Then you'll protect the lie." "Until your last breath." She swallowed hard, her body trembling. "I will." The Alpha turned back to the child. He reached down, his callous thumb brushing against the baby's cheek. Her eyes fluttered open bright, glowing faintly with gold. A wolf's eyes. An Alpha's eyes. His lips parted, breath unsteady. "She carries my strength," he whispered. "But she's not meant to exist." Angela sobbed. "Then why was she born under your moon?" He said nothing. The midwife wrapped the child tighter and handed her to Angela. "Your Highness, your son," she said, catching herself. Angela pulled the child close, her tears falling onto the baby's face. Her heart pounded. She didn't understand the Alpha's prophecy, nor the danger, but she knew one thing: this child was her life. The Alpha moved toward the door. Before leaving, he turned back. "You'll raise him as an Alpha heir. He would be taught to walk, to fight, to command. No one will ever see her as anything else. If anyone suspects the truth," he paused, his voice dropping to a growl, "it'll be your head." Angela nodded slowly, clutching the baby tighter. As he left, thunder shook the castle walls. The midwife whispered under her breath, "You've birthed a storm, Angela." A storm wrapped in silk. Angela didn't respond. She looked down at her daughter, the child who would never be allowed to be one. Outside, the wolves howled again, louder this time, like the heavens themselves were crying for what had just begun. Angela lifted her gaze toward the moon, whispering through her tears, "My Evander, forgive me." And somewhere far beyond the castle walls, in the deep black of the forest, a shadow moved, sensing the birth of power. The blood moon pulsed brighter, and for the first time in centuries, the old spirits whispered among the pack. "An Alpha heir is born, but she carries the heart of the forbidden." The storm roared louder, sealing the lie that would one day shake the kingdom to its knees. Chapter 2. The blood moon had long faded, but its curse lingered quietly in the heart of Valdaria. Years passed. The child everyone hailed as Alpha heir grew under the watchful eyes of secrets and shadows. The palace guards saw only a young boy, pale, graceful, and sharp-eyed. But in the dark corners of the castle, whispers always lingered. The Alpha heir never shifts during training. Why does the Alpha's heir never bathe with the other pups? They were whispers Angela heard every day. She lived now in a small chamber right beside the Evanders, close enough to rush in at any hour, close enough to hear her nightmares through the thin walls. Every night, she'd sneak into her chamber to check the bindings herself, the bandages she wrapped tightly around Evander's chest, the special herbs she rubbed on her skin to mask her feminine scent. It was torture. Not because she didn't love her daughter, but because each day Evander lived this lie, the weight grew heavier on them both. By 10, Evander could already best grown wolves in combat training. By 12, she could track a beast through fog without sound. And by 14, she learned to silence her own heartbeat. Angela would watch from afar sometimes, her hands pressed against the old wooden rails of the training ground. Evander moved like fire, swift, bright, dangerous. The young girl's golden eyes glimmered every time her claws brushed the air. But what Angela saw that others didn't was the pain beneath the grace. Every swing of her blade was too controlled, every breath too careful, as if she was fighting not just enemies, but herself. That evening, after training, Evander returned to her chamber. She sat before the mirror, her chest still bound, her shirt soaked in sweat. Her reflection stared back a warrior's frame, but with the haunting softness of a face that didn't belong to a boy. She clenched her jaw. "If I look long enough, maybe I'll believe it too." Angela entered quietly, holding a bowl of cool water. "You trained too hard again," she whispered. Evander didn't look up. "I can't afford to be weak." "You're not weak." Evander laughed bitterly. "Then why do I have to hide what I am?" Angela froze. "Evander, you think I don't understand the situation, mother?" She turned sharply, her golden eyes trembling. "Do you think I haven't seen the looks? The way the servants stare? The way father watches me when I'm near the others?" Angela's throat tightened. "You're too young to understand." "No," Evander whispered, "I understand too much." For a moment, the silence between them was unbearable. Rain tapped softly against the window, a familiar sound in this cursed castle. Angela walked closer, brushing a damp lock of hair from Evander's forehead. "You are alive because of that lie," she said softly. "And because of it, you are also trapped. But one day, my child, that same lie might save the whole kingdom." Evander met her gaze. "Or destroy it." Down in the lower corridors of the palace, another storm was brewing, this one not from the sky. The midwife, an old woman named Madra who had delivered Evander, had not been seen for years. But greed never truly sleeps. And tonight, she returned. She stood in the Alpha study, the firelight flickering across her face. "My lord," she began, her smile thin, "I trust the boy grows strong." The Alpha didn't look up from his desk. "What do you want, Madra?" "Gold, as always." "I've been patient. But the cost of silence has risen." Alpha Luis' amber eyes glowed faintly, the Alpha's warning. "I paid you tenfold." Madra smirked. "And yet, secrets like this don't die cheap." Alpha Luis rose slowly, towering over her. "Do you know what happens to wolves who threaten their alpha?" Madra's smile faltered, but she didn't back away. "You can kill me, yes. But my letters, my proof, are sealed. If I die, they'll reach the council by dawn." Alpha Luis' claws slid from his fingertips, the tips gleaming in firelight. "Then perhaps I'll just break your tongue instead." Madra's smirk trembled, but the warning in her eyes lingered. Moments later, she stumbled out of the chamber, clutching her face, blood trickling from her lip. She'd live for now. But Angela, who had been passing through the corridor, saw her. Their eyes met, and the look Madra gave her chilled her blood. It was the look of a woman who still owned too much truth. Days turned into weeks. The kingdom celebrated Evander's 15th shifting ceremony, the night when every young wolf was expected to call forth their inner beast. The Alpha's court gathered in the great hall, the banners of Valdaria blazing red and gold. But Evander never shifted. Not even once. When the moon reached its peak, she fell to her knees, trembling, her hands glowing faintly, but no fur, no claws, just pain. Gasps filled the room. The Alpha stepped forward quickly, hiding his panic behind a smile. He caught himself. He is only nervous. The blood moon calls for patience. But what no one else knew, not the nobles, not the guards, except from Angela, was that the Alpha himself had been feeding Evander a special herb mixture for years. A potion brewed from wolfsbane and moonroot, designed to keep her wolf trapped deep within. He feared that if she ever truly transformed, the truth would reveal itself in her form, a she-wolf, radiant and unmistakable. So he caged her wolf, bound it with herbs and lies, to keep the illusion alive. But the whispers began again that night, spreading through the crowd like wildfire. The Alpha's her wolf didn't come. Is he cursed? Or is he even one of us? Angela stood at the back of the hall, her hands clasped tight. She could feel the lie crumbling, one whisper at a time. After the ceremony, Evander stood alone by the balcony, the moonlight bathing her face. She whispered to herself, "If there's a wolf in me, why won't it answer?" A voice came from behind, gentle, teasing. "Maybe it's shy." She turned. It was Thatcher, the stable boy, her closest friend since childhood. He leaned against the wall, arms folded, that same mischievous smile he always carried. Evander sighed. "You shouldn't sneak up on me." He grinned. "You were brooding again. Thought I'd save the moon from your death stare." She almost smiled. "I failed the shifting." Thatcher shrugged. "Maybe your wolf's just stubborn. Like you." Evander looked away. "Or maybe it knows something I don't." He studied her for a moment, something unreadable in his eyes. Then he said softly, "Whatever you are, Evander, you're still the best of us." Her chest ached at his words, part gratitude, part fear. If he ever found out what she was hiding, would he still say that? Later that night, Angela watched Evander sleep, her chest rising slowly under the moonlight. The bindings, the secrets, the sleepless nights, all for this lie that was never meant to live this long. She knelt beside her daughter, whispering through trembling lips, "Forgive me, my child. I've made you a prince in a world that would have killed you for being born a girl." Outside, far beyond the castle walls, wolves howled again, louder this time. And somewhere deep in the shadows of the forest, the Alpha's rival heard the sound, and smiled. Because now, the scent of weakness had reached his nose. And in Valdaria, weakness was blood. Chapter 3. Just few chambers away in the pack house was seated the Alpha's first and favorite mate. She sat at her dressing table, her fingers tracing the rim of a silver mirror, her eyes locked on the reflection of her mate, Mira, who stood behind her. "Tell me," Caroline said quietly, her tone smooth as poured wine, "you were there that night, the night of his shifting, weren't you?" Mira hesitated. "Yes, my queen. I served the drinks." "And?" Caroline's eyes lifted, sharp and amber. The alpha heir fell. He trembled. But he never changed. Not a claw, not a growl. It was like his wolf refused him. Caroline hummed, leaning forward. Refused him? Or could not find him? She turned fully, the silk of her gown whispering. No young wolf resists the blood moon. Even the cursed ones shift at least once. Mira swallowed. Perhaps he was frightened. Frightened, Caroline repeated softly, almost to herself. Or hiding. She rose and crossed the room, her perfume cold and heavy. "You will find out for me, Mira. Watch him. Watch who enters his chamber, who touches him, who dares get close. Report everything. Do you understand?" "Yes, my queen." Caroline smiled faintly. "Good. The truth always crawls into the light, even when wrapped in royal silk." 2 days later, the scent of roses filled the prince's private garden. It was the Alpha's idea to host a luncheon for the noble daughters of Valdaria. But everyone in the castle knew whose idea it truly was. Caroline watched from her balcony as laughter floated upward, soft and honeyed. Evander sat at the head of the table, posture perfect, jaw tight. 3 young women sat beside her, giggling behind their hands. One Lady Irene leaned closer, her perfume strong, her voice sweeter than it should be. "You never look at anyone, Evander," she whispered. "They say no one in the realm has ever held your gaze." Evander's lips twitched. "Perhaps because no one has earned it." The girls laughed, delighted. Irene moved closer, her hand brushing her sleeve. "Is that a challenge, Your Highness?" Evander's body stiffened, so quick it almost looked like anger. She pushed her chair back, the legs scraping against the marble. "Excuse me," she said, voice steady but distant. "The air in here is too sweet." She walked off before anyone could respond. From the balcony above, Caroline's smile sharpened. "Too sweet," she murmured. "Or too close." That night, the halls were silent except for the whisper of her gown as she made her way to the west wing. She found her there, alone in the corridor, leaning against the window, the moonlight catching the edge of her jaw. "Your Highness," she said, her voice gentle, almost motherly. Evander straightened. "Queen Caroline. I saw you at the luncheon." She walked closer, her heels soft against the rug. "You ran from the table as if chased by ghosts." Evander's expression didn't change. "I don't enjoy crowds." "Or perhaps," she said lightly, "you don't enjoy women." Her golden eyes flicked toward her, a dangerous, warning glint. "That's a bold thing to say to the alpha heir." "I've always preferred bold truths to polite lies." She stopped at the front of her, her gaze searching. "You're different, Evander. You always have been. You walk like someone wearing another man's skin." She forced a smile. "Maybe that's because everyone expects a wolf. And I've learned to live like a shadow instead." Caroline tilted her head, studying her, the way a hunter studies prey. "Then why hasn't your wolf come?" Evander said nothing. Her jaw tightened, but her eyes stay fixed on the moon. "Some wolves take longer to wake." "Or some wolves," she murmured, "were never meant to." Her perfume clung to the air as she stepped closer. "Tell me, Evander, what are you hiding?" She turned suddenly, her voice slow and sharp. "Do you ask because you care, my queen, or because you fear?" Caroline froze, her lips parting, but before she could answer, she bowed slightly. "Good night." She walked away, her footsteps echoing down the marble hall. Caroline stood alone, the chill of her words still hanging between them. For the first time, she felt it, a flicker of unease. In her room that night, Angela listened to the faint creak of the floorboards next door. Evander was pacing again, restless, angry. Angela pressed a trembling hand over her heart. She could feel it, the herbs were losing their strength. Her daughter's wolf was stirring, and the cage that held it was cracking. Down the hall, Caroline sat at her vanity, staring into the mirror. "He's lying," she whispered to her reflection. "And I'll find out why." Outside, thunder rolled over the kingdom of Valdaria, echoing like a heartbeat. The hunt had begun. By morning, the storm had passed, but the palace air still felt heavy, like something unspoken lingered between the walls. Queen Caroline didn't sleep. She never did when she was close to the truth. Mira entered quietly, a tray of tea trembling in her hands. "Your Majesty," she whispered. "You asked me to keep watch over the Evander's quarters." Caroline didn't turn from the window. "And? The maids say he doesn't sleep at night. He paces. Talks to himself. Sometimes it sounds like two voices." Caroline turned slowly, her eyes gleaming. "Two voices?" "Yes, my queen. One calm. One," Mira hesitated. "One growling." Caroline's smile was faint but cold. "So there is something inside him after all." She crossed her desk, pulling a parchment and sealing wax. "Tell the kitchen to prepare his evening drink themselves tonight. I'll be sending a small addition to it." Mira's brows furrowed. "Addition, my queen?" Caroline's tone didn't waver. "If there's a beast inside him, I'll wake it myself." That evening, Evander sat alone at the long dining table, the hall quiet except for the drip of melting wax. She lifted the goblet before her, sniffed, and frowned. It smelled off. Still, she drank out of duty, not desire. The moment the liquid slid down her throat, heat rushed through her veins like fire. Her chest tightened. Her vision blurred. "Not again," she muttered, clutching the table. Her heartbeat thundered. Her nails bit into the wood. The beast stirred beneath her skin, pushing, clawing, begging to come out. Then a whisper, soft and frightened. "Evander." Angela's voice. She turned, eyes glowing faint gold, breath shallow. Her mother stood at the door, her face pale. She rushed forward, pressing a vial to her lips. "Drink," she whispered, tears trembling in her eyes. "Now, my son, drink." She obeyed, trembling as the familiar coolness spread through her body, the herbs, her hidden remedy. Her heartbeat slowed. Her vision cleared. When she finally looked up, her mother's hands were shaking. "She's testing you," Angela said quietly. "She knows." "Caroline?" Evander questioned like she was trying to confirm. Angela nodded. "I warned your father once. He said she's only being cautious. But this isn't caution, it's a hunt." Evander stared at her, jaw tightening. "Then let her hunt." "Evander," Angela wanted to stop her from saying anything she wanted to, but Evander cut in. "She wants a beast?" She stood, her voice low but fierce. "Then let her find out what happens when the beast wakes." The next day, Caroline's suspicion turned to obsession. At dawn, she entered the Alpha's chamber, her robe trailing behind her. Alpha Luis sat at his writing desk, already weary from council matters. "My love," Caroline began softly, "our son's condition worries me." Luis sighed. "He's fine, Caroline. He's healing in his own time." "He's hiding," she countered. "You know what happens to wolves who fail to shift. They lose themselves. They become dangerous. The people will whisper. The council will question his lineage." Her words were sharp, laced with poison and concern all at once. Luis rose, frowning. "Enough. He's our blood." Caroline's eyes flashed. "Is he?" The silence that followed was ice-cold. Alpha Luis stared at her. "What are you implying?" "Nothing," she said softly, looking away. "Only that he should be tested again. Under my supervision this time." "No." "Luis." "I said no, Caroline." He slammed his hand on the desk. "He's my heir. You will not turn him into your experiment." Caroline's lips parted, then slowly curved into a calm, practiced smile. "As you wish, Your Majesty." She bowed, but as she turned to leave, her eyes burned with quiet rage. Later that night, in her chamber, Caroline whispered to Mira. "If the Alpha won't grant permission," she said, eyes narrowing, "we'll do it another way." "How, my queen?" Caroline's fingers trailed across a silver amulet etched with lunar markings. "I'd wait patiently till the festival of the second moon. The palace will dance, the torches will burn, and every wolf in Valdaria will feel the pull of the moon." She looked toward the window, where the moonlight spilled like a blade. "If his wolf exists, it will have no choice but to rise. And when it does," she smiled darkly, We will see what truly runs in the royal bloodline. Meanwhile, in her chamber, Evander sat by the window, her gaze lost in the night. Angela entered quietly, a candle trembling in her hand. "She's planning something," she said softly. "I know. You can't go to that festival, Evander." "I have to," she said, not looking at her. "If I run, she wins. If I stay—" She turned then, her eyes shadowed. "Maybe it's time she learned why she should have left me alone." Angela's voice broke. "You don't understand. If you shift under that moon, it won't be like others. The curse." She stood, stepping close, taking her trembling hands in hers. "Mother, I'm tired of hiding. If the moon calls me, I'll answer." Angela's tears glistened. "Then pray it calls gently." Outside, the thunder rolled again, and far above, the second moon began to rise, pale, golden, and hungry. Chapter 4. The moon had never looked brighter. It hovered full and silver above the palace courtyard, casting long, liquid beams over the stone floors. Tonight was sacred, the festival of the second moon, when the royal heir's wolf would finally awaken before the pack. Drums rolled like thunder. Wolves from all clans filled the royal courtyard, dressed in ceremonial robes of white and crimson. The air smelled of burning herbs and night jasmine. Children clung to their parents, wide-eyed, waiting for the transformation that would mark their future alpha's strength. At the center stood Evander, her bare feet rooted to the cold marble, her chest rising and falling with the rhythm of the chant echoing around her. She was tall now, 18, her shoulders broad, her features sharper, a quiet shadow of her father's pride and her mother's secret. From the royal balcony, Alpha Luis watched with his jaw tight. His golden wolf mark glowed faintly beneath his collarbone. Beside him, Queen Caroline leaned forward slightly, her lips curving into an unreadable smile. In the far shadow, near the pillars, Angela stood with her heart pounding, unseen, yet unable to breathe. The high priestess lifted her staff. Under the light of the second moon, the blood of Alpha shall reveal its wolf. A howl broke from the pack, reverberating like wind through iron. Evander's pulse quickened. The sound seemed to crawl beneath her skin. The heat came slow, fierce, rising from her spine to her fingertips. Her veins throbbed gold. Her heart hammered. The air thickened. She felt her body responding, nails lengthening, skin tightening, eyes burning with strange silver light. Her back arched, a growl rising from deep in her throat. Then suddenly, the world shook. A scream ripped through the courtyard. Flames exploded from the far balcony, devouring the drapes in seconds. The torches toppled, sending sparks flying into the crowd. Mothers shrieked, clutching their pups. Guards rushed to the scene. "Fire!" someone yelled. "The eastern wing!" The priestess dropped her staff. Chaos spread like wildfire. In the confusion, Evander's transformation faltered, the golden light flickered out, her claws retreating, her knees buckling. She collapsed to the ground, gasping. Angela ran forward before anyone could stop her, kneeling beside her. "Evander," she whispered, gripping her shoulders. "Stay with me." She blinked up at her, dazed, eyes flickering between human brown and silver. It was happening," she rasped. "I could feel it." And then, she shook her head, pulling her close. "Not now. The goddess has her reasons. Not now." The king descended the steps, his robe catching ash in the air. "Get him inside," he ordered the guards. "No one speaks of this night." Caroline turned sharply toward the burning balcony, her expression dark. "Convenient," she muttered to her maid. "The fire erupts just as the boy fails to shift. How divine." The next morning, the palace smelled of smoke and secrecy. Ash still clung to the window frames, and servants whispered that the eastern balcony had been deliberately set aflame. But no one dared speak too loudly, not when the Alpha's temper hung heavy over the halls. Inside the Alpha's private chamber, the door shut quietly behind the old midwife. Her hands trembled as she clutched a small cloth pouch, the same one she had brought 18 years ago on a cold, moonless night. Alpha Luis turned to face her, his eyes shadowed with exhaustion. "This will be the last," he said, placing a heavy leather pouch on the table filled with gold coins. You'll leave the kingdom before sundown. No trace. No name. The midwife's voice cracked. My lord, you know I've said nothing all these years. I swore to the goddess herself. And you'll keep that oath in silence, the Alpha interrupted. His tone softened briefly. You served your purpose. But if anyone learns what happened that night, the boy's life is over. Tears shimmered in her old eyes. She nodded once, clutching the gold close to her chest. May the moon protect him, she whispered. As she turned to leave, the door creaked just slightly. In the corridor beyond, Queen Caroline froze mid-step. She hadn't heard a word, but she had seen everything, the exchange of gold, the secretive tension, the midwife's trembling hands. Her heart raced. Her lips curved slowly. Interesting, she murmured, watching the midwife hurry down the hallway and out through the servants' gate. The same woman from the night he was born, still earning her keep after 18 years. She turned toward the king's door, eyes narrowing. Whatever you're hiding, Louise. That night, as Evander lay awake, the faint scent of smoke still in her hair, she touched her arm where fur had briefly appeared before the fire interrupted it. The mark was gone now, only skin. She stared up at the ceiling, her whisper breaking the silence. Why won't the moon take me? And in the distance, the wolves howled again, long, mournful, and questioning. Chapter 5. Morning broke over Valdaria like a wounded beast, the sky pale and heavy, as though still mourning the fire from the night before. Inside Evander's chamber, Evander stood before the mirror, her palms pressed against the glass. Her reflection looked the same, human, fragile, unchanged. But inside, something wild and angry clawed at her ribs. She could feel it. The wolf, trapped, suffocating, begging to be freed. Angela entered quietly, carrying the same silver cup she always brought after full moons. Steam curled upward, smelling faintly of crushed leaves and iron. Drink this, she said softly, setting it on the table. Evander didn't move. What's in it? Angela hesitated. The same healing blend you've taken since childhood. Her eyes narrowed. Healing blend? Or cage? She froze. She turned sharply, her voice trembling with barely contained rage. Do you think I don't notice how every time I drink that thing, the burning in me dies? The beast goes silent. Angela's breath caught. Evander. She snatched the cup, staring at the dark liquids swirling inside. You've been poisoning me. Before she could answer, the door burst open. The Alpha stepped in, his voice low but thunderous. Enough. Angela bowed her head immediately, tears brimming. Evander looked between them, realization dawning. You both knew, she whispered. Alpha Louis' expression didn't waver. You are my heir. My kingdom's blood. If you had shifted last night, your wolf would have revealed the truth. What truth? Evander demanded. The Alpha's silence was the answer. Angela finally whispered that your wolf is not male. Evander's chest heaved. She took a step back, her voice breaking. So, you've been feeding me this poison to keep my wolf from showing herself? Louis' tone softened, almost pleading. You don't understand, Evander. The world you live in, it would tear you apart. The council would call it blasphemy. The people would revolt. You'd be hunted. Then let them. Evander's voice rose, eyes burning gold. Let them see what I am. Let them. Enough. The Alpha's roar shook the walls. You think I wanted this? You think I enjoy watching my own child live a lie? His voice cracked raw. I did it to keep you alive. Evander's breath came in shaky bursts. She looked at Angela, her eyes full of guilt, her lips trembling. And you? Tears slid down her cheeks. Every night I prayed the goddess would forgive me. She turned away, her voice hollow. She won't. I don't think she would. She hurled the cup to the ground, it shattered, dark liquid bleeding across the stone floor. Angela gasped, reaching for her. Please. But she just stared at her trembling hands. The faint gold shimmer that had started the night before flickered again, brief, weak. Then it died. Exhausted, defeated, she sank to the floor. So even my own blood is a lie. Angela knelt beside her, whispering through tears. If I could give you freedom, I would. But freedom in this world will kill you faster than truth ever could. The Alpha's shadow fell over them both. You will keep taking the herbs, he said quietly, until I find a way to protect you. Evander's silence was long, heavy. Then finally, her voice came out, low and broken. Fine. I'll keep your secret. But don't ask me to forgive it. On the other side of the kingdom, another secret was unraveling. Queen Caroline rode through the mist-laden outskirts, her cloak snapping behind her like a shadow with purpose. The trail had been easy, a single carriage, a few gold coins paid to guards who saw too much. At last, she reached the small cottage beyond the river bend, the one whispered to belong to the old midwife. Smoke curled weakly from the chimney, though no fire burned. Caroline dismounted, her heels clicking softly against the stones. She pushed open the door. Madra, she called softly. You've been busy, haven't you? No answer. Only the creak of old wood. The air inside was thick with the metallic tang of dried blood. Caroline's eyes swept across the dimly lit room. Overturned table, scattered herbs, an open pouch of gold spilled onto the floor. And then she saw it, the old woman's body slumped near the hearth, throat marked by claw wounds that had long stopped bleeding. She knelt, touching the cold skin. So the Alpha cleans his messes now. Her maid, pale and trembling behind her, whispered, Your Majesty, we should go. Caroline turned her gaze toward the window, her eyes narrowing. No, not yet. She noticed the parchment half-burned in the fireplace, only a corner survived. She picked it up gently. The writing was faint, but the words still legible. The child was never meant to be. Caroline's lips curled into a slow, dangerous smile. Never meant to be what, I wonder, she whispered, folding the scrap into her palm. Oh, Luis, your lies are starting to bleed. She stood, brushing the ash from her gown, her eyes glinting like sharpened glass. Let's return to the castle. The games finally begun. That night, while the queen's carriage rolled back toward Valdaria, Evander lay in her bed, her veins still humming faintly with something alive, something trapped. She closed her eyes, whispering to the darkness, If I am a lie, then someday, I'll become my own truth. And far beyond the castle walls, a wolf howled once again, softer this time, as if answering her. Chapter 6. Days turned into weeks. Evander walked the palace corridors like a ghost in her own body. Everywhere she turned, eyes followed, servants lowering their gaze too slowly, guards exchanging glances too long. Even laughter in the halls seemed to stop when she entered, replaced by hushed murmurs that followed her like shadows. At meals, she barely ate. At training, she strikes were too sharp, her movements too desperate, a prince fighting enemies no one else could see. And through it all, Caroline watched. The young queen had learned that patience was the most exquisite weapon. She moved softly through the court, a smile on her lips and venom on her tongue. At the dining hall, she leaned closer to a nobleman, whispering behind her cup. Strange, isn't it? The Alpha heir never shifts. Perhaps the goddess forgot him. At the council chamber, she sighed dramatically as she poured wine for the king's advisors. I heard his wolf rejects him. They say it's a curse passed down from the mother's blood. And in the village markets, her handmaidens let their tongues wag freely. The prince cannot take a woman to bed. The moon itself hides from him. By the time the first snow fell, the whispers had turned to certainty. The Alpha heir is cursed. The Alpha heir has no wolf. The Alpha heir is not fit to lead. Evander felt it all. The weight of every rumor. The echo of every lie. When she passed through the courtyard, the guards bowed, but too stiffly, too fast. When she entered the great hall, conversations stuttered, eyes dropped. And when she caught her reflection in the glass, she saw not a future Alpha, but a stranger caught between worlds. One afternoon, she trained alone in the frost-covered yard. Her sword cut through the cold air again and again, a rhythm that was once second nature now driven by rage. Sweat clung to her skin despite the chill. Her chest burned with the ache of something unsaid. She didn't hear Thatcher approach until the boy's voice broke through the clang of steel. Are you trying to kill the heir or yourself? Evander paused, lowering her blade, her breath ragged. You shouldn't be here. Right, Thatcher said, stepping closer. Because the cursed alpha heir can't be seen talking to a stable boy. Evander's grip tightened on the sword. You've been listening to them. Thatcher scoffed. Hard not to. Half the court talks like they've seen your soul. The other half acts like you're already dead. Silence stretched between them, sharp, painful. Finally, Thatcher said quietly, You shut everyone out, Evander. Even me. What are you so afraid of? Evander's eyes softened, the fight draining from him. Myself. Thatcher stared at her for a long moment, the wind stirring between them. Then, without another word, he reached forward and touched Evander's shoulder, steady, grounding. You don't have to fight everything alone. Evander's voice broke. That's the only thing I was ever taught to do. That night, Angela sat by her window, the moonlight soft on her wrinkled hands. She'd grown thinner, her breath shallower with each passing day. The guilt she carried had become poison in her veins. Every time she looked at her child, she saw both her greatest love and her greatest sin. Evander came to her room quietly. You should rest. Angela smiled faintly. I can't. When I close my eyes, I see everything I've broken. She sat beside her, taking her frail hand in hers. You did what you had to. Her voice trembled. Maybe. But what I had to, destroyed what you could have been. Evander lowered her gaze, unable to speak. After a long silence, she whispered, The wolf in you is growing restless, isn't she? She looked up sharply, startled, and Angela saw it in her eyes. The faint shimmer of gold, the pulse beneath the surface. You can't keep her buried forever, she said softly. Not even your father can. Evander clenched her jaw, whispering, Then what happens when she breaks free? Angela's gaze drifted toward the moon. Then, my child, the kingdom will finally meet the truth it deserves. Outside, the wind howled through Valdaria, carrying with it the whispers of a court drunk on rumor and fear. Caroline watched from her balcony, her fur cloak fluttering, a smile curving her lips. Let them talk, she murmured. The louder the wind, the easier the flame. And far below, in her quarters, Evander stood alone, feeling the pulse of something ancient beneath her skin. Her wolf. Her truth. Chapter 7. The great hall glowed in crimson light, the blood moons spilling through tall stained windows like liquid fire. Shadows of the councilmen stretched long across the marble floor, bending like dark omens around the throne. Evander stood before them, tall, steady, yet every beat of her heart echoed the fear that had followed her since birth. The murmurs of the High Council silenced as Lord Kale rose from his seat. Kale's smile was a weapon, cold, deliberate. An alpha heir without a wolf, he said, his voice slicing through the chamber, is no fit to be called future alpha at all. Murmurs rippled. Councillor Varen leaned forward, his voice grave. The kingdom trembles with whispers, Your Majesty. They say the gods have turned their backs on us. Kale stepped closer to the center of the room, his cloak trailing like a streak of midnight. Let him prove he is still man enough to lead, he said, turning his gaze on Evander. Let him take a mate, as tradition demands. Let the moon decide his worth. The alpha rose sharply from his throne, his voice thundering through the hall. He is my heir. His wolf will come when the moon wills it. Kale bowed, but his smirk never wavered. Then let the moon decide, Your Majesty. At the next blood moon, the wife selection ceremony shall be held. If the alpha heir refuses to choose, the throne passes to me. A hush fell. Even the torches seemed to hold their breath. The decree was sealed in blood before dawn. That night, the castle pulsed with uneasy life. Drums throbbed from the courtyards, deep and steady, like the heartbeat of the doomed. Servants rushed through corridors with bolts of silk and trays of rare perfume, preparing chambers for the maidens soon to arrive. Caroline watched from her balcony, her eyes glinting beneath the moonlight. Every step of her rival's son was another reason for her hatred to bloom. If the prince cannot love, she murmured to her maid, perhaps it's because he was never meant to be loved at all. In her chamber, Evander sat before the fire, shadows crawling over her face. Thatcher stood beside her, arms folded, gaze heavy with worry. They're forcing your hand, Thatcher said quietly. Evander didn't answer for a long time. Her eyes stayed fixed on the flames, as though trying to find her reflection in their chaos. "I was never meant to be the alpha," she said finally. "Nor husband." The door creaked open. Angela stepped in, wrapped in a shawl that looked too heavy for her trembling shoulders. Her face had grown pale, her strength eaten away by guilt more than years. "You will do this, my son," she whispered. "For the pack. For peace." Evander turned to her, his voice low, sharp with restrained hurt. "For peace." Her lips parted, but no sound came. Only a tear escaped, the first she had ever seen from her. Outside, the drums continued to beat, slow, relentless, echoing through every corridor and courtyard of the castle. The moon hung high and red above them, watching. The wife selection ceremony had begun its dark countdown. Chapter 8. The moon hung full and sharp over Valdaria that night, a red eye staring down at every lie the royal bloodline had ever buried. In Evander's chamber, silence ruled instead. Evander sat on the edge of the bed, her hands clasped tight, the heavy ceremonial tunic still wrapped around his chest. Every breath hurt. Beneath the layers, the bindings cut against skin already scarred by years of restraint. She'd been chosen by the people. She'd been crowned by their lies. Now they wanted proof, the final act in a lifetime of pretending. A knock came at the door. Alpha Luis entered, his face dark with exhaustion and something deeper fear. Angela followed behind, her eyes red-rimmed. The Alpha closed the door and motioned the guards away. "Listen to me carefully, Evander," he said, his voice low and trembling. "You must end this tonight. The council, the court, the people, they all expect to hear proof." Evander stared blankly at the floor. "Proof of what?" "Of your manhood." The words fell like stones between them. She turned away, fists tightening. "But I can't." The king's tone sharpened. "Then everything we've built, everything I've protected, collapses. The bloodline ends. Kale takes the throne, and the wolves of Valdaria will tear this kingdom apart." He pressed a pouch of gold into Evander's hand. The weight of it felt like a curse. "Give this to her," Luis said, his voice heavy, stretching a bag of gold coins to her. "Make her believe she's loved, even if for one night. Make her act. Let them hear what they need to hear. I'll see to it that no one asks questions after dawn." Angela turned away, unable to meet her child's eyes. "Forgive me," she whispered. Evander didn't speak. She only rose slowly and walked toward the adjoining chamber. Evander didn't wait for too long before picking any random maiden out of the ones parading before him. She led her into the mating chamber and quickly rushed into the bathroom to be alone. The bathroom was dim, lit only by the reflection of moonlight spilling through the tall window. Steam rose from the basin where servants had prepared water scented with herbs. Evander stared into the mirror. The girl in the reflection looked nothing like a future alpha. Her eyes were shadowed, her face pale, her lips trembling as if trying to hold back 1,000 screams. She splashed water on her face, gripping the sink so tightly his knuckles went white. "This isn't who I am. This isn't who I want to be." She whispered to the reflection, "Maybe if I run tonight, I can end this. I can leave the crown, the lie, the chains." But even as the thought flickered, the sound of laughter drifted through the door light, wrong, almost manic. She froze. That wasn't the sound of a girl waiting nervously. It was too wild, too distant. Evander straightened and stepped into the chamber. Lyra sat at the edge of the bed, her hair unpinned, her cheeks flushed a strange crimson. Her pupils had dilated until her eyes were nearly black. "Hey?" Evander asked softly. She turned to her, smiling, but there was something empty behind it. "You are here," she breathed. "They said you'd come." Her words slurred. She giggled, clutching at her neck. "Do you feel it?" "The moon. She's watching." Evander frowned, stepping closer. "Who gave you wine? Did you drink something?" But Lyra was already swaying. She laughed again, too loudly, too sweetly. "They said I should please you, that the moon will bless us when it hears us." Her fingers brushed against her arm, trembling violently. Evander felt the heat radiating from her skin. The scent of her blood hit his senses, bitter, sharp, wrong. Then she began to moan. Loudly. Unnaturally. Evander staggered back. "Stop, what are you doing?" But the crowd outside the chamber cheered, mistaking her cries for passion. The hall erupted with shouts, the drums picked up again, wolves howling in triumph. "No," Evander whispered, horror creeping into her voice. "No, no, no." She rushed to her side. Her body convulsed. Foam formed at the edge of her lips. She caught her before she fell. "Lyra." Her pulse fluttered weakly under her fingers. She could smell the herbs, the same sleep draft Angela used to suppress her wolf, twisted now into something deadly. Someone had poisoned her drink. Someone wanted this scene. She pressed Lyra against herself, rocking back and forth as the noise outside swelled to chaos. Evander didn't know when she screamed. The door burst open, the Alpha, Angela, and guards stormed in. "What happened?" the Alpha demanded. Evander's voice broke. "She's been poisoned." Angela knelt, checking the girl's pulse. "Barely alive." The Alpha swore under his breath. "We'll handle this quietly. The people must not know." But Evander wasn't listening. And before she could control it, she cried out loud. Because for the first time in her life, she saw it clearly, the beginning of the end. Before they knew it, other guards stormed in, followed by the council, their faces twisted in accusation. "What trickery is this?" barked Lord Kale. Counselor Varen hissed, "The goddess will not be mocked again." The Alpha tried to speak, but chaos filled the room. The maiden convulsed and fell to the floor. Someone shouted for the royal healer. Before dawn, an antidote was prepared. She survived, but the damage was done. The whispers were louder than the drums. The council demanded a public inquiry. Evander was to stand before them at sunrise. Angela's heart shattered. That night, she went to her daughter's chamber, her face pale from sleeplessness. "Evander," she whispered, clutching her hands. "Please, flee before the sun rises. Your father has arranged a horse behind the ritual house. Go. It's the only way." Evander shook her head, tears glinting in her eyes. "I won't run, Mother. You should go instead. They'll kill you if they know." Angela cupped her face. "I'll face them, Evander. If this lie must die, I'll bury it myself." When she left, silence filled the room. Evander couldn't sleep. She stood on the balcony, watching the faint stars fade into morning mist. The drums had stopped. Even the wind seemed to wait. Then, a soft sound behind her. A figure in black. Before she could turn, a cloth was pressed against her mouth, soaked in something sweet and deadly. Her vision blurred. The world tilted. The last thing she saw was the edge of the balcony, the torches flickering below, and a shadow dragging her into darkness. By the time the palace guards changed shifts, she was gone. No one had seen a thing. When Thatcher arrived at the spot, their secret place, he found only her cloak on the stone floor, fluttering in the cold dawn breeze. He called her name once. Chapter 9. Chains rattled against stone walls as Evander gasped, the taste of blood thick in her mouth. The dungeon reeked of damp moss and iron, lit only by torches flickering in their brackets. She hung from shackles bolted into the ceiling, wrists bruised, her back burning where the arrow had grazed her before they dragged her here. The forest of Valdaria swallowed her screams. Evander's wrists were bound with iron, her hair matted with dirt and blood. His capturers dragged him through the undergrowth like a fallen beast, their laughter echoing between the trees. By the time they reached the old wolf den, her knees were bruised and her lips split. Torches burned against the cave walls, painting her captors in crimson light. Lord Kale stepped from the shadows, tall, cold, his eyes burning with something between fury and triumph. He circled her slowly, like a predator studying prey. "I could see through you from the beginning," he said, voice sharp as a blade. "Something about you, off. Weak. Wrong. Every time I was close, your father's dogs covered your scent, your lies." He crouched, gripping her chin. "What are you hiding the air of wolves? Tell me before I peel the truth from your skin." Evander's silence was defiant enough. Her jaw clenched, blood trickled down her neck where his nails dug in. Kale smiled, darkly amused. "Then let's see how long that courage lasts." He stepped closer, his boots echoing across the stone. You think you can fool the goddess? Fool the pack. Kale's hand gripped her chin, forcing her to look at him. Even your scent is wrong. And when I return, I'll tear the truth from your throat myself. He released her roughly, turning toward the door. Watch him, he ordered his men. If he breathes wrong, cut it short. The door slammed shut behind him. For a long moment, the only sound was the crackle of the torches and Evander's uneven breathing. Then, from the shadows, a faint whistle, low, familiar. Her heart skipped. She knew that sound. The guards looked around, confused. What was? Before the second could finish, a dagger slit across his throat. The third turned, sword half-raised, but Thatcher was already behind him, moving like smoke. He struck fast, silent, efficient. The man fell before his body realized it was dead. Thatcher rushed to Evander's side, his face streaked with sweat and blood. Evander, he breathed, hold still. He drew a smaller blade from his belt and wedged it between the iron cuffs. Sparks flew. Metal screeched. The chain snapped loose from the wall. Evander winced, stumbling forward, but Thatcher caught her before she fell. Can you fight? He asked. Always, she rasped. He turned, snatched a sword from one of the fallen guards, and tossed it to her. Then fight with me. The door burst open, reinforcements stormed in, 5 men snarling, blades drawn. Evander swung first. The first guard lunged. She sidestepped and slashed across his chest, his growl turning to a gasp. Another came at Thatcher. He parried, spun, and drove his blade into the man's gut. The room filled with chaos, steel meeting steel, the sound of snarls and shouts, the echo of their rage. Blood streaked the floor. Evander's heart raced, not from fear, but something wild rising inside her. Her nails lengthened, her eyes glowed faintly gold, not a full shift, but the beginning. Power surged through her veins, raw and unstable. Thatcher noticed the flicker of gold in her eyes. You're changing, he whispered. I can't, she said through clenched teeth. Not here. A blade sliced across Thatcher's arm. He grunted, turned, and rammed the attacker into the wall. Evander finished him with a clean strike through the heart. Silence fell again. The room was a mess of blood, smoke, and broken iron. Evander's breaths came in short bursts. Thatcher's chest rose and fell heavily. He crossed the room, kneeling beside her. You're bleeding again. It's nothing, she said. But when he looked at her back, the old wound had reopened. Without hesitation, he tore a strip from his own shirt, pressing it against the gash. I need to take care of it properly, he said, voice firm but gentle. We can't stay here. Kale will return. Evander tried to rise, but the pain crippled her knees. Thatcher slung her arm over his shoulder. They slipped out through the back corridor, the night wind hitting them like a cold wave. They ran through the forest, through the mist, until the moonlight guided them to an abandoned hunter's cabin. Thatcher pushed the door open, laying Evander gently on an old wooden table. He tore through shelves for cloth and water, muttering curses under his breath. Stay still, he said. You'll faint if you lose more blood. Evander tried to push him away. Thatcher, no. You shouldn't see. I already know, he cut in softly. Her eyes shot to his. I've always known. He dipped the cloth into water, gently cleaning the blood from her shoulder. Since we were kids. Since the river days when you wouldn't swim with the others. I saw the truth and I swore to protect it. Evander stared, her lips parting in disbelief. Who do you think made the midwife fake her death? He said quietly. I knew Caroline would come for her. I scared the woman into playing along, blood, fake wounds, everything. Evander blinked. You. He nodded, voice heavy. The fire during the shifting ceremony, I said it. I wanted to distract them, to buy you time. Her eyes widened, trembling. And the girl they sent to your bed, his voice cracked. I poisoned her drink. Just enough to make her act strange. I couldn't risk them discovering what you were hiding. Tears welled in Evander's eyes. Thatcher, you could have been killed. I didn't care. He cupped her face, his thumb brushing her cheek. Every danger you faced, I faced it too. Because I knew the truth and I chose you anyway. Her chest heaved, her heart pounding against the secret she'd carried all her life. And for the first time, she didn't feel alone in it. Thatcher leaned his forehead against hers. "Rest now. I'll keep watch." The night was colder than most. Wind moaned through the cracks of the ruined hut they'd found for shelter. Thatcher had laid Evander down on a pile of dry leaves, her face pale under the faint light seeping through the broken roof. He crouched beside her, brushing her hair from her forehead. Her skin glistened with sweat, her breathing shallow and uneven. "Evander?" His voice was low, uncertain. She didn't answer. He leaned closer. That's when he felt it, a heat rolling off her skin like fire under fragile flesh. "Hey!" He pressed his palm to her cheek. It burned his hand. "You're burning up." No response. Only a faint tremor in her lips. He touched her neck. Her pulse thudded too fast, her skin slick with fever sweat. His chest tightened. "Damn it," he muttered, pulling off his gloves and cupping her face fully now. "Evander, wake up." She stirred faintly, whispering, "Thatcher, cold." He froze. The word hit him wrong. Her body was blazing hot, yet she felt cold. "Cold?" He shook his head, panic threading his voice. "No, you're on fire. Evander, stay with me." He grabbed his cloak and wrapped it around her. Still, her body kept shaking, her teeth softly clattering against each other. He added his coat, still not enough. Then he did the only thing left to do. He tore off his shirt, the cold air biting into his bare skin, and pulled her against his chest. At first she resisted weakly, mumbling something about him staying away, but the fever robbed her of strength. "Show easy," he whispered. "It's just me." Her skin burned against him, the heat almost unbearable. He rubbed her arms slowly, trying to coax warmth back into her trembling limbs. Her breath caught, uneven, shallow, then steadied just a little as she pressed closer, her face buried against him. Thatcher swallowed hard. He'd fought wolves twice his size and never felt fear like this, watching her burn up in his arms, helpless to do more. "Come on, Evander," he murmured, voice breaking. "You don't get to leave me now. Not after everything." She shivered again, a small sound escaping her, half a moan, half a sigh. When he looked down, her lips trembled, barely forming the words, "You shouldn't touch me." He managed a weak, pained smile. "You're delirious. If you were yourself, you'd have punched me by now." Her lashes fluttered, a faint ghost of a smile appeared before she drifted off again. He held her tighter. Her heartbeat slowed against his chest, her breathing finding rhythm with his. He pressed his chin to her hair, whispering against it, "You stubborn, beautiful fool. You burn like the sun and still fight the light." The wind howled outside, carrying the scent of rain and blood, but inside that little hut there was only silence and the fragile, sacred sound of two hearts beating close enough to keep each other alive. Chapter 10. They left the hut before sunrise, their footprints swallowed by dew and mist. Evander's fever had passed, but her body still ached. Thatcher walked close beside her, one hand hovering near her back in quiet protection. Neither spoke much, the silence between them heavy, alive with the memory of the night before. But peace never lasts long in Valdaria. By mid-morning, the forest grew uneasy. The birds had gone quiet, the air too still. Thatcher's ears twitched, his wolf senses sharp. "Run," he said suddenly, voice low, urgent. The first arrow sliced through the air, whispering past Evander's shoulder. She barely had time to react before another one came, and another. Dozens. Arrows raining down like silver hail, slicing through leaves and bark, thudding into the earth around them. "Go!" Thatcher shouted, drawing his sword. His wolf roared just beneath the surface, his eyes blazing gold. Evander turned to fight, but he shoved her forward. "Run, Evander!" She stumbled into the shadows of the trees, heart pounding, but every step she took felt like a betrayal. She could hear him fighting behind her, the clash of metal, the guttural growls, the cries of dying men. The forest burned with cries of chaos. Smoke curled through the air, thick with the scent of iron and pine. The royal guards had turned traitor, each one wielding the queen's insignia and a hunger for blood. Thatcher's breath came ragged as he pushed Evander behind the fallen column of stone. "Stay low," he ordered, voice hoarse. Evander's lips parted to protest, but the look in Thatcher's eyes silenced him. It was that same gaze that had always both calmed and terrified him. Fierce. Protective. Final. Another arrow sliced through the mist. Thatcher caught it midair on his vambrace, but the next one sank into his shoulder. He barely flinched. "Thatcher!" Evander gasped, reaching for him. "Don't," Thatcher warned, gritting his teeth. "Keep your head down." But Evander couldn't. The sight of Thatcher, bleeding and still standing between her and death, shattered something inside her. She peeked through the smoke just in time to see two more shadows advancing silent, fast, blades drawn. Thatcher turned, dragging his sword from the dirt. He met the first man head-on, steel ringing against steel. Sparks lit the air like fireflies. He parried, stumbled, then drove his blade into the attacker's chest with a desperate cry. The second came from the flank. Evander shouted a warning, but too late. The blade pierced Thatcher's side. He staggered, pain ripping through him. The sword clattered from his grasp. And still, he stood. Blood soaked through his tunic, his breath shallow now. He could feel his strength slipping, but when the archer drew again, aimed at Evander, Thatcher's body moved on instinct. He stepped in front of him. The arrow struck his chest, deep, cruel, final. The sound of it landing echoed louder than the war cries around them. His body jerked back, but he didn't fall. His arm reached behind, pulling Evander closer, shielding her completely. Another arrow flew. Then another. Each one found Thatcher before it could find Evander. By the third, he finally crumbled, knees hitting the earth with a dull thud. "Thatcher, no, no." Evander caught him before he fell backward, her arms trembling as she lowered him gently to the ground. Thatcher's blood stained Evander's hands, hot and slick. She tried to press against the wounds, but it was useless. There were too many. "Why would you do that?" Evander's voice cracked, tears slipping down her face. "You could have lived, Thatcher, you could have lived." Thatcher's breathing was shallow now. His lips quivered, but his eyes, those same piercing eyes, found Evander's and held them. For a long, unspoken moment, the world fell silent. The fires burned around them, but they didn't see it. Just the two of them, locked in a stare so deep it swallowed time itself. Evander's heart thundered. Her hands shook against Thatcher's cheeks. She could feel the blood pulse beneath her fingers, slowing with each beat. "Don't close your eyes. Please," she whispered. Thatcher gave a weak smile. "Couldn't let them touch you," he breathed. "Not while I still can stand." His head tilted slightly, his gaze softening. "You don't even know what you mean to me, Evander." Evander bit back a sob. "Then tell me. Say it, please say it." Thatcher's eyes fluttered. "You're my reason," he managed. "Always were." Evander's throat tightened as a tear slid onto Thatcher's cheek. "You don't get to leave me with that." A faint, broken chuckle left Thatcher's lips. "Guess I never followed the rules very well." His hand rose, trembling, to touch Evander's face, fingers brushing against his jawline, tracing the tear that had fallen. "You'll live, that's enough for me." Evander caught his hand, pressing it against her heart. "No, it isn't. Not if you're gone." But Thatcher's gaze was fading now. The world dimmed at its edges, color draining from the scene. His lips trembled as if trying to shape words too heavy for breath. He could taste blood, hot, metallic, spilling down his tongue, but all he could see was her. Evander. Her face was pale, streaked with tears and dirt, her eyes wide with a kind of pain that tore through him more sharply than any arrow could. "Thatcher, no, please, no," she whispered, pressing her hands to his wounds, as if her touch alone could hold him together. Blood soaked her palms, warm and slick, but she didn't care. "Stay with me, you have to stay with me." Arrows still jutted from his back, 3, maybe 4, and each shallow breath rattled through his chest. He reached weakly, his hand trembling until it found her cheek. His thumb brushed her skin in a shaky line. "Evander," he breathed, his voice a cracked whisper carried by the wind. "You have the fire in you. Don't let them take that." She shook her head violently, clutching his hand against her face. Stop talking. We can make it. I'll get you help, Thatcher, I promise. But he knew. And so did she. He forced a smile, faint, but it reached his eyes. I told you. I'd protect you. Even from fate. Then his body gave another jolt as another volley of arrows sliced through the night, thudding into the trees around them. Without thinking, Evander threw herself over him, a desperate instinct, shielding him though he was already half gone. The forest echoed with the distant roar of Kale's men, closing in. Evander, one of them shouted. Don't make this harder than it has to be. She pressed her forehead to Thatcher's, her tears falling onto his lips. You stupid, stubborn man, she sobbed, voice trembling. You could have just run. His lips curved faintly again, whisper-light. Didn't know how. Not from you. And then a breath. A pause. A stillness that shouldn't have been. Thatcher, she called softly. Thatcher, open your eyes. Please. Nothing. Her heart clenched, her body shaking as the world fell silent around her. No arrows, no shouts, just the whisper of wind through leaves. She wanted to scream, but her voice caught in her throat. All she could do was cradle his face, brush back the blood-matted hair, and press her forehead to his one last time. Footsteps approached. The enemy had found her. Take her, someone barked. The master wants her alive. Hands yanked her away, rough and cold. She fought, kicking, clawing, sobbing. Her screams echoed through the trees, calling a name that would never answer again. Thatcher. The men dragged her off into the darkness as the moonlight spilled across Thatcher's still body, arrows glinting like shards of silver, his blood painting the ground like a cruel offering. And in the cold hush that followed, the wind seemed to carry a whisper. Not from him, not anymore, but from the forest itself. Live, Evander. Live for what they tried to bury. Chapter 11. Evander, battered, was dragged from the shadows. His once white shirt was soaked crimson, his hair matted with sweat and dirt. Kale stepped forward, the moon slicing across his armor. Finally, he hissed, grabbing Evander by the collar. The runaway future alpha. Evander spat blood, but his voice was steady. You won't win, Kale. Kale's smirk curved cruelly. Oh, I already have. He ripped open the torn fabric at Evander's chest, meaning only to mock his weakness, but what he saw beneath the bindings stopped him cold. His eyes widened. The bandages wrapped tight around Evander's chest were stained with blood, and beneath them, unmistakably, was the curve of a woman's body. The forest went still. Even the night air seemed to pause. Kale stumbled back a step, shock flickering into something darker. You're not. Evander's jaw tightened. Her voice, hoarse but fearless, cut through the silence. I am still the future alpha. Nothing you tear from me changes that. Kale stared, disbelief hardening into fury. He grabbed her by the hair, forcing her face up toward the moonlight. All this time, a woman leading wolves, he spat. Your father lied to us all. Evander met his glare without blinking. He lied to protect me. And still, I led better than you ever could. Kale's hand trembled, part rage, part humiliation. Bind her, he ordered finally, voice low with venom. The people will see what their future alpha truly is. His men hesitated for a heartbeat, even though they looked uncertain now, but the command in Kale's voice was final. They bound her wrists, threw her over a horse, and rode into the night. They dragged her in like a fallen god. The once beloved alpha heir of Valdaria, bloodied, barefoot, wrists bound, thrown to her knees before the same people who once bowed before her. The great doors of the pack hall groaned open and silence followed, thick and trembling. Even the torches seemed to flicker in hesitation, unsure whether to light shame or justice. Her hair, once brushed neatly to the back, hung in damp knots across her face. Her jaw was bruised. The collar of her tunic was torn. She was breathing, but barely. And then Lord Kale said the words that broke the world. Unmask her. The guards hesitated. The alpha said nothing, his eyes were hollow, his hands shaking so slightly only Angela noticed. Kale's mouth curved. Do it. The sound of ripping cloth echoed through the hall. Evander's chest bindings loosened, falling away in tatters. Gasps erupted, sharp, horrified, unbelieving. A girl knelt where the alpha heir should have been. A woman in the clothes of a man. Their heir, their future alpha, stripped of the illusion that made them feel safe. Someone screamed. Someone else spat. A soldier dropped to one knee, eyes wide as if facing a ghost. And from the crowd, whispers, then shouts, then chaos. What trick is this? The alpha heir is a woman? The alpha deceived us. Blasphemy. Angela's hands flew to her mouth. The color drained from her face as if life itself fled. The alpha stood frozen, lips parting but no sound coming. The truth he buried for 18 years now clawed its way to light, wild, merciless, alive. Evander raised her head slowly, strands of hair falling from her bruised face. Her eyes, the same storm gray that had once made the council call her the future alpha, were wet, but not with weakness. She looked around at the people she had led, fought for, bled for. They looked back like strangers. Evander, Angela's voice cracked. My son, the words stumbled, fell apart on her tongue. Kale stepped forward, triumphant. This alpha's line is cursed, he declared. He deceived the moon, the gods, and his people. Your future alpha was no man at all. The crowd roared, a sound between grief and rage. Evander felt it in her bones, like thunder pounding inside her ribs. She turned toward her father. He was trembling, not as an alpha, but as a man who had finally been caught by the consequences of his own mercy. He had hidden her, protected her, built a throne of lies to keep her alive, and now the whole thing was burning down. Angela stumbled forward, reaching for her child, but the guards blocked her. Don't touch her, one barked. Her, the other repeated, laughing bitterly. It's her, then. Angela broke past them, fell to her knees before Evander, and touched her face, shaking. I did this, she whispered. I told him to keep you hidden. I thought I was saving you. Evander's voice was quiet, but cut through the hall. You saved me, only to bury me. Angela's breath caught. Her knees buckled. The alpha lunged forward, shouting her name, but too late. She collapsed, her head resting against Evander's shoulder. Mother. Evander's hands shook as she tried to wake her. Mother, please. The healers rushed forward. But Angela's eyes were still. The weight of her secret, her shame, her guilt, had crushed her heart before anyone could judge her. Evander screamed. It tore through the hall, raw and wild, echoing like an ancient howl that shook the banners on the walls. The alpha fell beside Angela, holding her body as if the force of his grip could pull her soul back. The court, once loud, went deathly silent. Even Kale, smug and venomous, faltered for a heartbeat at the sight. Evander looked up, tears and fury mixing like fire and rain. Her voice came steady now, broken yet blazing. You call me a lie, she said, standing slowly. But it was my strength that won your wars. My hands that healed your wounded. My voice that led your wolves. This body deceived you, but my soul has led you. She stepped closer, unflinching, daring. Does that make me less of your alpha? Her words rolled through the chamber like thunder. No one spoke. Not Kale. Not the council. Not even the king. She stood there bound, bloodied, and unmasked, but she had never looked more like a leader. Then the chains were pulled tight again. The guards dragged her backward, through the hall slick with her mother's blood and her father's silence. The doors closed behind her with a sound like final judgment. Outside, the first drops of rain began to fall soft, cold, merciful, as if the moon itself mourned what had been done. Chapter 12. They didn't throw her in a cell, they buried her in silence. The guards said nothing as they dragged her through the corridors, past the empty throne room where her mother's blood still stained the marble. Every echo of their boots felt like a hammer against her chest. When they locked the door behind her, she didn't fight. She just sank to the ground, back against the wall, breathing like someone learning how to exist again. The air was cold, damp stone, iron, and old grief. Moonlight bled through the cracks in the window, thin and trembling, just enough to paint her in silver, the same silver her mother once said marked those chosen by the moon. But tonight, the moon felt like a witness, not a god. Her hands were still bound. The rope burned against her skin where the blood had dried. Every movement reminded her that she wasn't free, not in body, not in name, not in truth. She tried to close her eyes, but each time she did, she saw it again. The moment her mother fell. The way her father screamed her name. The faces of her people twisting from devotion into horror. Her heart felt like it was splitting along all the old scars she'd hidden. She wanted to cry, but there was nothing left to give. The tears had dried somewhere between her mother's final breath and the sound of the doors closing behind her. So she sat in silence and listened to the rain. Outside, Valdaria was weeping. Thunder rolled like the voice of a god she no longer believed in. "She's dead because of me," she whispered into the dark. "All of this, because of me." Her voice cracked on the last word. It wasn't guilt she felt, not exactly. It was the weight of everything. The truth that had been too heavy for her mother's heart to bear, now pressing against her own ribs like a blade. She thought of Thatcher. Of the way his hand always found hers before battle. Of the soft way he said her name when no one else could know what it really was. Was he really gone too? Just like that. The wind answered with nothing but a low, mournful howl. Hours passed. The storm thickened. And somewhere below, her father refused to leave her mother's side. They said he sat there all night, the once great alpha crown fallen beside him, whispering apologies to a woman who could no longer hear him. When the first pale light of dawn crept through the cracks, the door opened. The high seer stood there, flanked by 2 guards. His face was carved with pity, the kind that feels like judgment. "The council awaits," he said quietly. Evander rose slowly. Every bone ached. Her wrists were bleeding, her lips cracked, her body exhausted, but her eyes burned steady. "Tell them," she said, voice soft as ash, "they can take everything from me but my soul." The seer looked at her for a long moment. Then he bowed, not to the prince, not to the daughter, but to something else entirely. "The moon sees you, child," he murmured. "And it grieves." Chapter 13. The great hall of Valdaria was filled before dawn. Every noble, every elder, every wolf who had once raised their fist in loyalty now came to see the fallen heir, or perhaps, the deceiver who had ruled them in disguise. Torches flickered against whetstone. The storm outside hadn't stopped. It raged against the castle walls as if the heavens themselves demanded to witness what was coming. Evander was led in through the central doors, bare feet against cold marble, wrists still bruised from the ropes. Her head was unbowed. Her hair, unbound at last, fell past her shoulders like liquid night. For the first time, they saw her not as the alpha heir, not as the lie, but as the truth itself standing before them. Whispers rolled through the crowd like ripples through water. "A woman. The goddess will curse us. She led us to victory, didn't she? She shamed the throne." The council stood in a crescent before her. One of them stood at the center. His face was pale, hollow. His crown sat lopsided, as if even it refused him now. "Evander," he began, voice breaking, "you stand accused of deceit, of defying the moon's sacred law, of ruling under false name and form. What do you say?" The hall held its breath. Evander lifted her chin, eyes burning with something deeper than defiance, truth. "I say I did what I was born to do," she said softly. "I led. I was protected. I bled for this land when your sons hid behind excuses of tradition." A murmur of unrest. The high seer raised a trembling hand. "The moon forbade women the throne. The moon," Evander cut in, voice like thunder wrapped in silk, "forbade weakness. Not womanhood." Her words struck through the silence like a blade. "Look at me," she cried. "Did the moon strike me down in battle? Did it turn its face away when I fought for our borders? When I saved your sons from death?" Her father's eyes filled not with anger, but shame. Kale, standing among the guards, sneered. "You were a curse wrapped in silk. You deceived even the goddess." Evander turned slowly toward him. Her chains rattled. "I deceived no one," she said. "Only those too blind to see the strength in what they call forbidden." Kale's smirk faltered. The high seer stepped forward, voice quivering. "If you truly speak truth, then let the moon judge you. Here. Now." The torches guttered. Wind howled through the hall. And then light. The light swirled around her, wrapping her in a halo of blinding silver. Her hair lifted, her eyes glowed white. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of something ancient. The moon never asked for a sun. It asked for courage. And I have given it mine. The hall trembled. The storm broke. The moonlight flared, and when it faded, she stood free. Not as a boy, not as a prisoner, but as the chosen heir of Valdaria. The high seer dropped to his knees. The moon accepts her, he cried. The people bowed one by one, some in awe, some in shame. Even the Alpha fell forward, tears streaking his face. My daughter, he whispered, voice shaking. Our future Alpha. Evander's gaze swept across the hall, grief, power, forgiveness, all warring in her eyes. Then let this kingdom rise anew, she said. Not built on fear of what we are, but on the strength of what we can become. Chapter 14. The palace trembled with the cries of war. Smoke billowed from the eastern towers, the scent of burning fur and silver steel filling the night. Evander stood in the ruined throne room, her hair tangled, her armor streaked with blood that wasn't all hers. The moonlight pooled across her face like a benediction, pale and cold. Her father lay on the steps of the throne, his crown shattered beside him. His breathing was shallow, his chest rising in weak, uneven pulls. It's too late, he rasped. Chaol has returned, with the rogues. The city will fall. Evander caught his hand, trembling. Then let me fight. He looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time, not as the daughter had hidden, but the leader had forged through lies. He nodded once. Then fight, my Alpha. Outside, the courtyard blazed red. Wolves and soldiers clashed beneath a bleeding moon. Chaol's army poured through the broken gates, a swarm of fury and metal. And from the balcony above, Evander stepped out, her cloak fluttering behind her, her sword gleaming silver in the moonlight. Gasps rippled through the pack. No crown. Just a woman wearing truth like fire. Chaol rode forward on a black steed, his sword dripping with blood. A pretender queen, he sneered. Come, then. Show your people what you are. Evander's grip tightened on her blade. I will, she said softly, and leapt from the balcony. She landed with the grace of prophecy. Their swords met midair, silver clashing against steel, fury against pride. Sparks erupted like stars scattered to the ground. Chaol's strength was monstrous. He drove her back again and again. But Evander was not fighting to win, she was fighting to end it. Each strike came with the memory of Thatcher's laughter, of her mother's final breath, of the kingdom that called her a lie. Her rage was holy. Her pain, divine. The battle raged until Chaol's blade cut deep into her shoulder, forcing her to her knees. You see? Chaol growled, pressing his sword to her throat. Even your gods know what you are, a curse. Evander's eyes lifted to the moon. Then let me curse you. Light exploded from her skin. Her body convulsed, bones shifting, fur rippling through her veins. Her scream became a howl, not of pain, but awakening. A great silver wolf stood where the woman had fallen, her eyes glowing like twin moons. Chaol stumbled back, horror twisting his face. Impossible. The wolf lunged. She tore through his soldiers like wind through smoke. She was speed, fury, and grace, vengeance and mercy bound in muscle and silver flame. Chaol managed one last desperate swing, the blade slicing toward her exposed side. She didn't see it. The world slowed, a hiss of metal, a flicker of silver, and then another sword cut across Chaol's attack, shattering it midair. Evander spun and froze. Standing behind her, bruised but alive, was Thatcher. His eyes burned with the same fierce loyalty she remembered, cracked with grief, but unbroken. Miss me? He breathed, voice raw from pain. Chaol turned, fury igniting. You. Thatcher didn't let him finish. He drove his blade straight through Chaol's chest. The enemy's roar split the air, then fell silent, his body collapsing in the mud. Evander shifted back to human form, gasping for breath. The moonlight wrapped around her like a shroud. Thatcher quickly removed his rope and put it on her. Her knees buckled, and Thatcher caught her. For a long heartbeat, they just stared, the war fading around them, the smell of smoke and iron dissolving into something tender, fragile. Evander's voice shook. "I thought you were dead." Thatcher smiled faintly, his thumb brushing blood from her cheek. "I told you once. I'd always protect the truth, even if it meant dying for it." Her eyes softened. "And yet you lived. For you," he whispered. When dawn came, the rogues were gone, scattered or slain. The pack knelt before Evander. She stood between fire and moonlight, her silver hair matted, her skin marked with battle, her eyes bright with tears she refused to shed. No longer the prince they once followed. Not a lie, not a secret, but their alpha queen. Thatcher bowed before her, hand over his heart. "Long live the future alpha of Valdaria," he said. And when the moon rose again, Evander lifted her gaze to it and whispered softly, not for her people, not even for the gods, but for herself. "The moon never cared whether I was son or daughter, only whether I was brave." Epilogue: The Reign of the Alpha Queen. The dawn broke soft and gold over Valdaria. For the first time in years, the air carried no smoke, no screams, only the gentle hum of wind through the pines. The kingdom was healing. The land that had once bled now breathed again. And in the heart of it all stood Evander, no longer the alpha heir she once pretended to be, but the woman she had always been. Her hair, grown long and free, caught the morning light like threads of silver. She wore no armor now, only a simple gown of pale linen, the color of dawn. Her scars glowed faintly in the sun, each one a story the people whispered with reverence. She visited her mother's grave every morning. Today was no different. The marble stone shimmered softly, flowers blooming wild around it, lilies, her mother's favorite. Evander knelt, tracing the carved name with her fingertips. Her voice trembled as she whispered, "I hope I made you proud, Mother. The secret that once caged me has set us free." A gentle breeze stirred the trees, as if the spirit of Angela herself was answering. Footsteps approached behind her, quiet, steady. She didn't need to turn to know who it was. Thatcher. His scent was the same, smoke and pine, faint steel and warmth. When she finally looked up, the sight of him stole her breath. He had changed. Older now, broader. A scar ran along his collarbone, the proof of what he'd endured for her. Their eyes met, and for a long moment, neither spoke. Thatcher's gaze softened, tracing her face as though seeing it for the first time, not the face of his future alpha, but of the woman he had always known beneath the disguise. "You look different," he murmured, breaking the silence. Evander smiled faintly. "Do I?" "Not really," he said after a pause, voice low. "It's me who's finally seeing you right." The words landed between them, gentle but heavy. Evander's heart skipped. She turned away, pretending to fix the flowers, but her hands shook slightly. "You shouldn't be walking this far," she whispered. "The healers said you're still recovering." He laughed softly, that quiet, deep sound she'd always found disarming. "And missed the chance to see the Queen of Valdaria in her favorite hiding place?" She rolled her eyes, but the warmth in them betrayed her. "You always had a way with words." "I learned from you," he said simply. She turned to him then, really turned. The morning light painted his face in gold, his eyes reflecting the sky. Something shifted between them, fragile yet powerful, like the air before a storm. He stepped closer. "Do you remember," he said quietly, "when we were 12, you told me you'd never let anyone see you cry?" Evander smiled wistfully. "I remember you teased me for saying that." "I wasn't teasing," he said. "I was in awe. Even then, you carried the weight of a kingdom in your shoulders. And I just wanted to carry some of it for you." Her lips parted, but no words came out. He reached out slowly, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered, just barely, against her skin. Her breath caught. "I almost lost you," he said, voice trembling now. "When Kale took you. When those arrows hit me. I thought that was it." Her eyes welled. "I thought I'd lost you too, Thatcher. I thought the moon was cruel to let me love you too late." He froze. The word hung there, love, between them, fragile as glass. Thatcher's throat tightened. "Evander." She met his gaze, no more walls, no more armor. "I fought my whole life to be someone I wasn't. But with you, I never had to pretend. He cupped her face, thumb brushing away a tear that had escaped. I think I've loved you since before I even knew what that meant. Her lips trembled, then curved into a soft, tearful smile. Then stop thinking. He leaned in, hesitating just long enough for her to rise on her toes and meet him halfway. The kiss was gentle at first, years of restraint melting into one trembling breath. Then deeper, desperate, as if they were both trying to make up for every moment they'd ever lost. When they finally pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his chest, his heartbeat strong beneath her ear. For the first time in forever, the world was quiet, peaceful. Later, as they walked back toward the palace hand in hand, Evander looked up at the sky, the silver moon faint even in daylight. Thatcher smiled and kissed her knuckles. Then it must love you endlessly. And it did. Because that night, for the first time in centuries, Valdaria's moon rose brighter than ever, shining over the Alpha Queen who had turned her curse into a crown, and the man who had always seen her for who she truly was. Seasons passed. Years turned like pages in an ancient book. Valdaria healed, and so did its queen. Under Evander's reign, the land flourished again. The rivers sang louder, the forests grew wilder, and the wolves of the kingdom howled not in grief, but in pride. The moon's favor, once believed lost, glowed brighter than ever over her people. But time, even for the strongest, is a gentle thief. The old Alpha King, her father, grew frail. The weight of his secrets and regrets had long aged him faster than the seasons. Yet, before he breathed his last, he took Evander's hand in his and whispered, through tears, "You became everything I prayed the goddess would let you be, my son and my daughter, my strength and my heart." Evander wept quietly beside him. When he closed his eyes for the last time, the moon outside their window dimmed, as if bowing to the end of an era. Days later, the kingdom gathered beneath the great oak to bid their Alpha farewell. Evander stood beside Thatcher, fingers entwined with his, her head held high though her heart ached. When the chants faded, she turned to her people, her voice steady. The Alpha's line does not die with him. It rises through those who keep the pack united. The wolves held their answer, one voice, one heart, one family. Years flowed gently after that. The castle that once echoed with war songs now filled with laughter, the kind only children could bring. Their son, Rian, carried Thatcher's eyes, steady, fierce, loyal. Their daughter, Leora, had Evander's spirit, wild and brilliant, already challenging the pack guards to training duels at age 9. Sometimes Thatcher would stand in the doorway of their chamber, watching Evander tuck the children in. The sight never failed to steal his breath, her silver hair spilling over her shoulders, her voice soft as moonlight. "You're staring again," she'd tease without turning. "And you're still the most dangerous creature I've ever loved," he'd reply, wrapping his arms around her waist. The end. The heart of this story is simple. No matter who you are, where you're from, or what your background looks like, your purpose is still valid. Your gender doesn't stop you. Your color doesn't stop you. Your identity doesn't limit you. I spent days writing this story, pouring my energy into every detail and building it piece by piece. I truly hope you enjoy it. I want to say thank you for listening to this beautiful story. I'm Grace Mira, and every story you hear here is written by me, with the voices and images brought to life using AI. If you enjoyed this one, please subscribe, like, and share. Your support helps me create more lovely stories for you.